When it comes to approaching your rewrite, I'm a massive advocate of not just jumping straight in. When I was working on a relationship on the green, it took me considerably longer to actually sit down and start my rewrite than it did to actually write the first original draft. Basically, I think it took 7 months to first put pen to paper to come up with my first manuscript, and it then took me 8 months from when I submitted it to a friend to get some opinion on to then actually sit down and actually come up with a plan to actually make this a better novel. And that's because so much needed to be done in the meantime. I needed to read around and actually explore the themes I was trying to put across in my novel. The feedback I received was saying that some themes came across a lot stronger than others, so I needed to balance that. But I actually needed to actually learn myself of what I was really trying to do. I ended up, for parts, going back to 5 different novels and writing out bits of them in an exercise book that inspired me, that motivated me, and used them as inspiration of the type of scene that I wanted to create that would be really specific to my story, but have that emotional connection that I had discovered in the work of other writers. Some works that inspired me were obviously David Nichols, who I'm a huge fan of, but also Small Worlds by Caleb Zuma Nelson, which blew me away. And there was so much of what he wrote that was so relevant to what I was trying to say. His father-son dynamics, I learned so much from, and by putting them down in a notebook, I was able to kind of analyze and start drafting my own mini scenes that I would love to say emulate his work, but would be more Newington Green rather than Peckham. David Nichols himself describes the process of one day and how he took the approach of actually doing blank page rewrites, of taking the manuscript and having it on paper next to him, but then having a blank screen and rewriting chapters from scratch. Basically, not letting the original work anchor him, developing what, after having the characters in his head for so long in the first draft, would be almost more authentic dialogue pieces than would have existed in the original. It's this concept of anchoring that could hold us back. By having our original manuscript in front of us on a screen, when it comes to the editing process or the self-editing, we're really reluctant to remove what's there because we feel really connected to it. So what we do is, when it comes to the feedback we received, we end up adding bits on here and there. What I found really helped me with Relationship in the Green, especially when it came to my opening, was going to a blank piece of paper and writing something down without my manuscript anywhere in sight. I wanted to write down what my character would say, what they would actually feel, and what was actually the most important part. I realized that with the first draft I'd originally written, I was just again trying way too hard to put everything on paper that I thought a reader needed to know to actually get into the story, rather than actually writing what the story was about. It was about a relationship, and that needed to demonstrate who was in love with who and why someone would love someone else so much that even the concept of them thinking the relationship is over sends them into some form of spiral. So having that blank page and crafting that opening from scratch really helped me develop something that ended up being so much stronger than what I originally had. But I didn't just stop there. There were other sections, especially when it came to those opening chapters, that weren't as strong as they could be. And I knew that because I was reluctant to show them to someone else. They were fine, but I'd written them such a long time ago that my characters had changed from that original moment. It's not like they developed new personalities, but they became more nuanced. And I also had more of an idea of what the story was and what it wasn't. So I had this scene in a pub that I focused so much on gentrification, and that really wasn't the story. I got a little bit distracted with so many ideas that were in my head at the time. So when it came to even editing this scene, I was going, oh, I'll keep this bit in, oh, I'll cut this line, I'll do this. And then it became somewhat disjointed. So my advice is to actually hone in on, say, chapters or say scenes that if you're not comfortable with sending somebody as a demonstration of your work in isolation, if you're not comfortable that it actually reflects your best writing, go back to a blank page and start writing that scene from scratch, because you'll end up having something a lot more reflective of your real story, because you've worked on a full manuscript, because you've had that draft, and it essentially will be a lot better.